Oh, hi everyone, I'm Becky Robinson, and I'm so thrilled to join you today for a free webinar about marketing your book. I want to let you know a few things as we get started. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll make the recording available on our website and on YouTube after today's event. We also have some slides today, and we will send you a PDF of those in our follow-up email after today's event, and we would welcome you to share either the recording or the slides with anyone with whom you might think might benefit from it. We also are going to have some time for Q&A toward the end of this half hour together, and so I would love to have you take a moment quickly to get accustomed to the question panel. I can see that my friend Dan has already found it. He made some music for us while we were waiting to begin. So if you want to take a moment and find the question panel, you can feel free at any point in the webinar to put your questions there. If I am able to multitask, I might answer them along the way, or I will loop back to them at the end of our time together. So please, I welcome you to find that question and answer panel. Also in our chat, you'll notice that we're going to use the hashtag today book marketing. And if you love Twitter, you can tweet and include my Twitter handle at Becky Robinson without the vowels. The Robinson part is without the vowels. That's also listed in the chat window if you would like to live tweet anything you might learn from today's event. And I would love to see those tweets later. I'm definitely not going to try to look at them during the webinar. A couple of other things. One of the reasons why we're here today is we want to share about our newest product, the Book Marketing Action Guide. So I hope that you'll stay tuned toward the end of this event so you can hear a special message about a limited time offer related to the Book Marketing Action Guide. I thought it might be fun today to get to know the audience a little bit, and so I created a few fun polls that I'm going to start launching one after the other to get to know you today. Of course, by looking at the attendees, some of you are familiar, some of you are not. So I would love to know, starting out with this fun question, how did you find out about today's webinar? And if you can take a quick moment to let me know how you found out about today's webinar. Perhaps you saw a Facebook ad or someone shared on social media. Maybe you're already on our email list or saw this event on the website. We'd love to know how you found out about the webinar. If you happen to choose other as your choice, if you could click into the question panel and tell us what that other way is that you found out about the webinar, I would love to know. And I'm going to give you just another second, and then I will close the poll and show you what we found out. So here we go. Let's share these results. It looks like 70, I just hid them, didn't I? There we go, we're sharing. So 79% of you found us through an email invitation, which is really interesting and will relate to something I'm going to say later. I firmly believe that email marketing is one of the most effective tools that we have in reaching our audiences, and these statistics show it. Not a single one of you from our paid Facebook ad about this event. Not that that doesn't mean that people found out about us that way. I think Facebook ads can also be valuable, but interesting to know that most of you came to us today from that email invitation. All right, here's another fun poll. Tell me a little bit about you. Which of these statements most closely represents you? If you are an aspiring author today, if you are working on a book that you plan to self-publish, if you're working on a book that you are planning to traditionally publish, or if you are an experienced author with multiple books. Apologies to anybody on the call for whom that's not relevant. I realize we may have some folks on the call who are not authors at all, although presumably if you're interested in book marketing. If there's an other, feel free to put that in the question panel as well. And thanks to you for participating in those polls with me. I appreciate that. So let's take a quick moment. I'm going to see if anyone else wants to answer before I close up that second poll. Okay, so closing this one and sharing the results. It looks like about a third of you are aspiring authors, about a third of you working on a book for traditionally publishing, and I see some notes there that there are a couple of you on the call who are marketing directors for authors, so I certainly hope that this will add value for you. A few experienced authors on the call, as well as some who plan to self-publish. Okay, one more. Well, actually two more. Wow. Okay, so when will your next book come out? The poll is in progress. If your book is going to come out in the next 3 to 6 months, if you're not sure, if your book's going to come out sometime in the year 2018 or if your book has already been released. Looking forward to seeing how many of you are represented on this call. Boy, I feel your pain, all of those who don't know yet when your book's going to come out. Sometimes the path to publication can be confusing and overwhelming. Okay, just a couple more seconds if you'd like to answer this poll about when you expect your next book to come out. And here's what we've got on results. 42% of you on today's call have an urgent need for the material that I'm going to share because your book is coming out in the next 3 to 6 months. A quarter of you have a little bit more time, or maybe about half of you have a little bit more time as you don't know yet when your books are going to come out. So more on that later. And finally, one more poll for you today. So if you're making plans to market a book, we'd love to know how you plan to market your book. Do you plan to hire a marketing and PR team like the one that I represent? Do you plan to use a DIY approach, perhaps a blend? Maybe you're still figuring it out, or perhaps you have an internal marketing team or are part of an internal marketing team that's going to support the marketing of a book. So, looking for how you plan to market your book. Thanks for your attention to the polls. It's really helpful to get an idea of who you are. So I'm going to close that one up and share the results. And it looks like we have about 43% who are planning on a blend. Some of you who are still figuring it out. Not anyone who's going to completely outsource the marketing of their book. And it looks like no one here has that internal marketing team support. At least not anyone who answered the poll. So thank you again for your participation in our polls. It helps me a ton to know who you are as we start the call. And I realize that I did not introduce myself. In case you don't know me, my name is Becky Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence. We're a digital marketing agency and we support authors of business books primarily. We've been in business since June of 2012 and to date we've marketed about 90 books. So what I'd like to share with you today are the 4 phases that we've outlined that we find are very helpful in an author as they seek to move from publishing to marketing their book. And so we're going to talk through those today. We do have a limited amount of time and we want to make sure that we get to your questions. So we envision the book launch process in 4 stages or phases. And as you start at the top on this red one called building, at any given time, an author needs to be in the building phase of marketing their book. Marketing a book can be so challenging, and quite often you are limited to your own network and then the networks of those whom your network can touch. And so at any given point, the most important thing that you can do is to always be building your network, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I've heard that perhaps you can't see my slides because you're still looking at the poll. Is that true? So now hopefully you can see my slides. Thank you, Margie, for the heads up there. So this graphic here outlines the 4 phases of marketing your book, starting with building. So the building phase could begin even as you write a book. So I sat down this morning for coffee with an author, and she is just now beginning to think about crafting her book. She's beginning to refine her ideas and figure out exactly what her message is in the world. And what I said to her is, Alicia, if you are thinking about writing a book, you also have to be thinking about building the audience for the book. So if you are an aspiring author and you're listening to my voice today, you should be in the business of building the network who can eventually buy and share your book with others. If you're actually in the process of launching a book in 3 to 6 months, I would say that the 3 to 6 months out, so I can't think of what 6 months from now is suppose your book is launching in November. You want to count back 6 months, and at the very latest 6 months before your book is going to be published, you want to be focused on the priorities of building. Then about 3 months out from your launch, you're going to shift into what we call the working phase of your book launch, and we'll talk on this call a little bit more about what that might look like. Then we feel that it's very valuable to be focused on the launching of your book. Typically, the launching of your book is centered around the week or the month in which your book is published. And we find that launching the book and focusing energy around a specific date or set of dates helps build incredible momentum for your book marketing efforts. So the launching phase is that week or month around the publication date. Then what happens once the book is launched? Well, then you go back to what we call the advancing phase. And I like to give the short definition that the advancing phase is how you keep your book in the conversation and market it over time. Jill Friedlander, who was a founder of a publisher named Bibliomotion, once said that if you're going to care enough to write a book, you need to be married to the message. And I don't know about those of you on the call, I've been married 24 years, and I plan to stay married. And so if you care to write a book, what you want to do is have that long-term view and long-term commitment to marketing it. And that's what the advancing phase is about. Then, as you'll see, our circle goes back to building again, because advancing also loops in those priorities that you have in the building phase, that you always want to be reaching more people and building new connections. So we're going to take a few minutes to dig a little bit deeper today into the building phase. And in the building phase, and this could be from the moment you decide to write a book, or it could be starting at that 6-month point prior to the publication of your book. In the building phase, there are basically 3 things that you always want to be building. You want to be building connections. You want to connect to as many people as possible in as many places as possible. And when you think about connections, you want to build connections on social media channels. So, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you want to have as many as you can. This is not the time to limit your network. Not only do you want to build connections in those online virtual spaces, but you also want to be building as many in-person connections as you can as well. And so if you are building toward the marketing of a book, the sooner that you can get involved with local organizations and networking groups and meet as many people as possible as fast as you can, that's going to help you as it relates to marketing your book. Now, I realize there might be some introverts on the call and you're probably cringing, like, really? I need to build connections. If your focus is on marketing, you want to have as many connections as you can. The other thing you want to focus on during the building phase of your book launch is building content. So content marketing works, and in order to implement content marketing strategies, you have to have content. What we found in working with authors is that quite often, as soon as your book is done, you want to quit writing, right? You're tired of writing, you want to quit. And actually, though it might feel counterintuitive, as soon as your book is completed, that's actually the time to be looking at what content do I have that I can use to build interest in my book. So are there parts of my book that didn't make it into the final manuscript? Are there blog posts that I can be writing that complement the content in the book? What are the social media posts that I can write? And what many authors are surprised by is the need to continue to churn out value-added content as it relates to their book marketing. And the more that you can get that done in advance of the launch of your book, the better off you'll be. The third thing that you want to be building is contacts. And so early on this call, we noted that 79% of you are attending this webinar because you received an email from me. And building a permission-based email marketing list is one of the most important things that you can do as you prepare to build toward a book launch. And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. We definitely don't have time to get into all of that today, but it can start with something as simple as organizing the email contacts that you already have, and then finding a way to invite those people to be a part of your permission-based list, and then being sure that you're going to send content to them over time. So just to summarize again, the building phase, this is something you want to be building connections, content, and contacts for the entirety of any book marketing plan. And you want to start as soon as you can, even as soon as you start to write your book. And you want to make sure that you're continuing to build connections through all the phases of the book launch. So I think I just skipped through all these slides. So here's, a repeat for you. Create as many connections as possible as far in advance of your launch as possible. And whenever possible, be as generous as you can to others. One of the things that we found is that it's really transparent if an author just shows up on the scene on social media to ask for help and hasn't done the hard work to build real connections. So even before you've thought of writing a book, the more you can build generous relationships in which you're giving to others, the more you're going to have these real relationships that you can call on later. This is just a demonstration of the value of growing your LinkedIn network over time, and how if you choose to grow your LinkedIn network over time, you're going to be connected to exponentially more people. We talked a little bit about content. So what content have you previously created that you can organize, catalog, and repurpose in marketing your book? And the second part of that is, what new content do you need to create? And every author has access to what I call a treasure chest of content, because if you have gotten to the point of writing a book, you've likely created a lot of content over time that can add value in marketing your book, including blog posts, articles, interviews, and books. So you can think about your book as being a liquid asset. And so once you have the book itself, you can break it down into smaller pieces that you can then repurpose in marketing your book. So your book can become social posts, or articles for newsletters, or videos that you might share, or graphics that bring your ideas to life. Your book can be made into several speeches that you could share with different audiences. It can be shaped into articles and blog posts, and even podcast topics over time. Again, review contacts. So who are those people who are interested in your message, who can opt into your list, and who will support you in getting the word out about your book? So Susan Fowler is a partner that we've had the privilege to support over time, and one of the things that I've loved seeing as it relates to the success of her journey is, she came in with a career of many, many years as a Blanchard consultant and had worked with many companies who had valued her work. And so part of our priority in supporting her was helping to identify how can she connect to those past connections and contacts to let them know about her work. Cheryl Batchelder is another longer-term partner of ours that we've served, and one of our challenges or opportunities with her was, okay, here we have this busy CEO. At the time that we launched her book, she was serving as the CEO of Popeyes, and obviously didn't have the time to write that content once the book was written. So we needed to get quite creative about what content had she created in the past that we could repurpose and reuse in support of her launch. So thinking about the working phase of the book launch. So the working phase is when everything starts to get real. You're about 2 to 3 months out from the book launch, and you have a strategy in mind. You have potentially influencers that you want to get your book into the hands of. The working phase is really the crazy busy time leading up to the launch of your book. So a story about the working phase, my team and I have worked with Mark Miller on multiple books, 5 or 6, not really sure how many. I always get confused, but at any rate, the book before his latest book, Leaders Made Here, was Chestnut Checkers. And one of the things that we did to prepare for Chestnut Checkers is, this is my previous home, and that's what 1,200 books or 2,500 books looks like, all stacked up neatly. And one of the key priorities of the working phase of your book launch is getting early copies of your book into the hands of people who can read and review them. And it was a thrill for our team to have the privilege of distributing those 2,500 copies of Chestnut Checkers to people who are interested in reading and reviewing it. And as a result of this generous seed sharing that Mark did with Chestnut Checkers, we saw over 200 Amazon reviews posted for him in the first couple of weeks leading up after his book was launched. So in the working phase, one of the things that you have to do to work is get the books, handwrite letters, package letters, stand in line at the post office. Here are my kids. And I had a whole army of them labeling letters. If you intend to send out books, you definitely want to think about who are the people in your life, big or small. In this case, it was little people, who can help in distributing books and who can stand in line on a Saturday morning at the library to get books out into the world. Oh, I feel sentimental. Those are my sweet kids. They helped us through the working phase of launching a book. Chip Bell did a really unique thing in the working phase of launching his previous title, Sprinkles. We've since launched his newer book, Kaleidoscope. Chip came up with some unique ways to get the message of his book across, and you can't quite see in this photo, but he sent a whole pack of content at the holiday time when he sent out Sprinkles, and sitting on top of the book here to the left, I'm pointing at my screen, is a little container of Sprinkles. So as he sent out Sprinkles to people who might want to read and review it, he added this special touch of some sprinkles. So in the working phase, you want to be thinking about what are the creative, strategic things that I can do to get the word out about my book that might be a little bit different. You know, how can I make my mailing of my book stand out from the rest? What's the unique approach that I can take to be memorable and compel people to want to participate in sharing my book with others? So launching is an exciting time. As I mentioned, we find that there's a lot of helpful momentum that we create when we focus energy and attention in book marketing in a week. And quite often it might feel that everything that we're doing is just waiting until the launch. And really, the launch is just a beginning of continuing to keep the value of your book in front of your audiences. We had a lot of fun launching Alexandra Watkins' book, Hello, My Name is Awesome. And one of the cool things that she did was to plan a branded launch party. So when you think about launch, you want to think about both the online and the offline activities that you can do to help people become invested in the excitement of your book coming into the world. And as I mentioned previously, what you want to be able to do is mobilize people who are willing to share the message of your book with others. Sometimes that in-person event can be a memorable way to rally people's energy and attention. So the last phase is the advancing phase, and as I mentioned, we always want to see that advancing phase loop back to the building phase as we continue to grow opportunities for our books. One of the authors that we had the privilege to support was an author named Marcia Reynolds with her book, The Discomfort Zone. And we ended up connecting with Marcia about 6 months after her book launched. And one of the things that we did with her, and you can likely access the recording of the webinar that we did together, it's been a long time ago now, but we planned a webinar 6 months after her book came out in which we highlighted the content of the book to a group of influencers and corporations and other organizations. And one of the things that Marcia told me when that webinar was over is that as a result of this webinar that pointed back to the content in her book 6 months after it was released, she got enough leads for business that she filled her calendar for the remainder of the year. So while it might feel that maybe the book is tired after a month or 2 or 3, there's important value in continuing to share the message of the book and the value of the book with the people in your network beyond the launch date. And Marcia's webinar was a really great example of that. Julie Winkle Giulioni and Bev Kay are some of my favorite authors, and their book, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, is one of the very first ones that we marketed back in 2012, came out in September. And I continue to see ways that Julie is linking this book into the articles that she's writing on online channels, and people are still talking about and using and benefiting from this book. So Julie is a great example of being married to the message and advancing keeping the book in the conversation for months and even, as I said, like 5 years into the future. So when you choose to invest in building your online influence through marketing your book, you are choosing to create the biggest possible impact for your mission and message. And that's something that I believe firmly, and I'm really happy to get to share with you today. So before we talk about the Book Marketing Action Guide, the new resource that my team and I have created for authors, we have a few minutes that we can take your questions. And it seems like there are some here already. And I will be happy to answer them. Except that my phone is ringing and I'm breaking the #1 rule of webinars by having it be live. Oops. Okay, so Joseph is asking, is giving away free content in blogs, videos, podcasts, and speeches going to hurt book sales? Joseph, I think absolutely no. Giving away free content in blogs, videos, podcasts, and speeches is really the only way we have of helping people know about us and the value that we can bring in the world. And on the contrary, even giving away free books, the way that Mark Miller and many other authors have done, actually seems to be fuel that feeds book sales even further. So I don't know that there's a way that you can be so generous that, that you're not going to see results beyond what you've given away. Susan is wondering if there are any marketing features on Amazon self-published that I recommend. That's an interesting question, and offhand I can't think of any. So if you could ask maybe a bit more of a detailed question, I might have something to offer, but there are some authors that we know who have experimented with Amazon giveaways. and have seen some traction from that. So you might want to experiment with that if you have budget to do so, Susan. But otherwise, unless you want to clarify your question, I don't have any suggestions as it relates to that. So we have time for a few more questions. I would love to hear them. So Carrie is wondering how we got 2,500 books in advance, and were they pre-sale orders, and did those numbers go to the list? And is hitting the list, the New York Times list, something you should shoot for? Carrie, that's an excellent question. So the 2,500 books that we got in advance were purchased by the author from the publisher. In this case, the publisher was Barrett Kohler, and Barrett Kohler has a practice of releasing pre-publication copies before the launch date for publicity and other purposes. Those books were purchased directly from the publisher, so those did not count toward pre-sale orders, nor did they report to the New York Times list. The whole New York Times list question is a huge one. In most cases, if you're a first-time author and you're a business book author, primarily that's what we're working with, I don't know that the New York Times list is a worthy goal. And one of the things that I always want to do is to help authors see the bigger why, and the why is never going to be about book sales. If you've heard any of the math, the news is not good as it relates to someone making a living by writing business books. And so most typically what you want to have is a bigger goal. You know, perhaps you're building your consulting business. Perhaps you're going to raise your keynote fee. Perhaps you're going to look for new opportunities to grow a new business, and you want to get credibility in your market. But you always want to point back to, you know, what is the bigger picture goal that you have in the world. I don't know that trying to gun for a list is a approachable goal for most people, especially not a first-time author. Carrie, there's a great article if you want to Google Tim Grahl and New York Times bestseller and read what Tim Grahl has been writing and saying about the New York Times and other bestseller lists. That would be an eye-opening opportunity. We can also find and include that link in our follow-up email if it would be helpful to all of you who are listening. Have we done work with any fiction authors? Primarily, we support business book authors. However, the principles that we share are transferable. The main work that we've done with fiction authors, Priscilla, is through our startup division, Hometown Reads, where we are featuring authors from all sorts of genres. We're in 53 locations, and we have lots of books featured there. We also build websites for book authors of any kind and have some great templated and easy to create sites that can help any author with their book marketing efforts. The website is a key part of that. So hopefully that helps, Priscilla. So as a reference, you can check out hometownreads.com, or if you check out weavinginfluence.com, you can find out more about our author services. Primarily, though, most of my examples are from our business book authors. Of the 90 books that we have launched, 90 plus books, I would say, you know, 85 of them are business books, and perhaps 5 are other genres, including inspirational. So I hope that helps. We are coming to the end of our hour. I want to make sure that everyone knows about our new book marketing action guide. What I did is I filmed about nearly 30 videos that have detailed instructions on the 4 phases of the book marketing process that we've outlined. So there are videos and checklists. You can set your own pace. There are PDF resources that have detailed information. And I know I was talking fast in this 30 minutes, but the great thing about the book marketing action guide is that you can do it at your own pace. You have access to all the resources. And for a limited time, we are going to include 2 one-hour coaching group calls with me for the first 10 people who purchase the book marketing action guide. You might wonder where you can find it. It is at weavinginfluencelab.com, and we'll include that in the follow-up email. But the book marketing action guide is now available. We have it priced at $499. It includes access to the course for 6 months, plus 2 hours of group coaching with me to be scheduled at a time that works for those 10 people who sign up for the book marketing action guide. I want to thank you so much for your energy and attention today. I hope that I've provided value, given you something to think about as it relates to your book marketing, and we would be honored to support you and coach you through book marketing, whether through the Weaving Influence Lab book marketing action guide or through the core business at Weaving Influence. So I look forward to connecting with you in the future, and thanks again for being a part of this event today.